Good evening. Welcome to Book Launch. I'm Darren Baker, and the book we have for us is called From Robber Barons to Courtiers, The Changing World of the Lovells of Titchmarsh. The author is Monica E. Simon. Now I say Simon and not Simon because she's German. And Monica will be speaking with us shortly about her book, not about her being German. Her book was actually released last year around this time, but the circumstances of the world did not permit it to have the launch that it deserves. Now, why do I say the launch that it deserves? Well, there are the merits of the book, naturally, but that's not enough to gain attention in this day and age because English history, as we know, is zealously guarded by a seven-headed hydra known as Henry VIII and his 6 wives. And history of this sort, which is to say, not boosted by Shakespeare, doesn't have much of a chance of thriving in the public conscience until the immortal head of Henry is chopped off and left to slither under a rock somewhere. So, how does From Robber Barons to Courtiers stand up to this monster, shall we say? I think quite well. For one thing, this history is very expansive, much more expansive than the Tudors. And, you know, when we say expansive, that suggests inclusive, and don't we love to hear that word again and again. Their history starts in Normandy in the 11th century, and it just goes all the way on until we reach some climax in the waning days of the Wars of the Roses. So that's about 500 years we're talking. I mean, the Tudors have nothing on them as far as longevity is concerned. I myself was quite familiar with one of them, that's Philip Lovell. He was the treasurer for Henry III, and you can read about Philip in my biography of Henry III. Everyone got a screenshot there? Yes, good, okay. Philip was quite a controversial character, and he died in disgrace. But the Lovells kept going after that, amassing wealth and power until the most famous of them, Francis Lovell, was raised to the nobility by Edward IV towards the end of the 15th century. After that, Francis kind of disappeared, or did he? Well, let's find out from the author herself. So we have with us Monica, as I said before. She's German. She was born and raised in Bavaria. She is the third of 4 sisters. Right there, I have an affinity to her because I'm the third of 4 brothers. So what brings somebody from the south of Germany to the north of England to give us this story of the Lovells? Well, let's find out. Good evening, Monica.
Good evening. How did I end up in the north of England? Well, first of all, my grammar school had an exchange program with a school in Lincolnshire, so not quite as far north, but already quite far north. And both 2 of my sisters and myself went to this on this exchange program. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those experiences where you get a lasting interest in another country. And being interested in history, I also started reading about English history. And one of the people I became interested in was Richard III, as quite a lot of other people were. And so when I decided to study a year abroad during my MA, I went to York. And because I liked it there, I decided to do my PhD there as well. And I wanted to research a medieval aristocratic family. in fact, my original plan had been to study the Holland family, but they had already been the subject of a PhD thesis. And so my second choice was the Lovells because of Francis Lovell, obviously, because he's the only one that is, or that has some fame, is known in certain circles.
And did he really disappear just like that?
But we don't know what happened to him. We know he was at the Battle of Stoke, and after that, it's a mystery, basically. There is a safe conduct that was issued by James IV, I think, of Scotland, a couple of years later, but that is the last sign of life we have. So there are rumors that he died shortly after the battle. There are rumors that he hid in Minster Lovel, which I think is very, very unlikely. And of course, there's the story that 150 years later, a skeleton was found in Minster Lovel that was in a secret chamber under the hall that then crumbled into dust.
Where are you located at present?
I am at present located in Munich.
Munich, that's the Oktoberfest city, right?
Exactly. It's Oktoberfest, Hofbräuhaus in Bayern München.
And have you ever participated in an Oktoberfest?
Oh yeah, a few times. I'm not a huge, some people go every day. I just go every now and then.
Did you ever work at one?
No. Too strenuous.
Okay. So you have the courage to take on the English baronial families, but not a local Oktoberfest. Okay. What kind of a time frame are we talking about here, from the time you went to England until you produced your work on the Lovells?
Well, I finished my PhD actually already more than 20 years ago. And I've been meaning to, actually publish something and haven't. But then now I have.
Yeah. So, and do you have plans for another book?
Vague plans. I haven't actually done anything so far. I've been thinking about writing a book about Empress Adelheid, who I wrote my MA thesis about. But apart from thinking about it, I haven't really done much.
Right. Well, anyway, that's some great information there. I think we are ready for the ceremony of the launch. Now, in honor of the Lovells, originally coming from Normandy, I have chosen this French sparkling wine, Cavignon. Normally I use Bohemia Sec, but of course we must go with the atmosphere at present. I have my mixing bowl, of course, to serve as the font. You cannot imagine how many cakes have been produced in this thing. So I will just undo the foil here. As always, I must be careful about my neighbor upstairs. She has these hardwood floors, and anything that bounces off my ceiling reverberates throughout her halls. So, got the tin off. Here's your book. I'll have it just to the side here as I open it. If anybody out there has a glass of anything and would like to indulge along with us, feel free. So, excellent. All right, you'll put your book in the font. Everybody can see it here. And I gotta say the appropriate words of christening. Well, let me get a little bit more position here. All right, so Monica, for your book, I hereby christen thee from robber barons to courtiers, the changing world of the Lovells of Titchmarsh. There we go. All christened ready to go out into the world, ready to, I hope, enlighten English history beyond, as I said before, that seven-headed hydra. And I'm sure lots of people will be very grateful for it. I'm gonna let your book dry out over here to the side. I have my glass here, so I raise it to you as a toast to your future success.
Thank you.
Well, I have to say the Bohemia set gives it a run for its money, but not bad. So I have the whole bottle to keep me company here. So what we're going to do now is Monica has prepared a slideshow for us. So we're going to go through some of the images which appear in her book, and we will talk about them. Now, what is the first slide we see here?
This is just to give you an overview over the family I was researching, or that the book is dealing with, and the kind of sheer number of people that do appear in the book. This is the first half of the family tree from the very early time in Normandy, right at the top, to about the end of the 14th century. And as you can see, most of the Lord Lovells were called John, which makes it a bit confusing to talk about them. But that's a problem that's general with the English aristocracy, that they have.
I see there Philip Lovell, that's my guy.
Yeah, that's your guy.
Right, okay, so, well, that's the first group there. So we have another slide here, and this is a continuation of the family.
Exactly, this is the second half of the family tree, where you have Francis Lovell kind of in the middle to the left. And as you can see, I'm also looking a bit beyond the actual family that's called Lovell to some descendants through the female line. And yes, we do get into the Hydra territory here, because the last generation, the Parkers that I'm talking about, were during the reign of Henry VIII, and we will come to this further in the talk.
Okay, so you're talking. So we're into the Henry VIII. So they survived the Wars of the Roses, basically, the family.
Yeah, but through the female line, so they're not called Lovell anymore. So this is a place connected to the very beginning of the family. This is the ruins of the castle of Ivry. It's kind of on the Norman-French border between Rouen and Paris. And it was a very strong fortified castle. And Asselin Goel, who was the first ancestor of the Lovells we know anything about, fought a long feud with his lord about possession of this castle. And he made it into history books through his, well, rather unpleasant behavior, but people who are unpleasant are more often written about than nice people. So,
do you have an example of this unpleasant behavior?
I mean, he took his lord prisoner and held him captive in his other castle in Breval, and subjected him to various forms of torture, including putting him in an open window, clad only with a wet shirt in the winter until the shirt was frozen solid. And so we know that because Orderic Vitalis writes about it. Yeah. So in the 12th century, the family was by then called Lovell, moved to England, or were granted land in England. And in the 13th century, they built a castle here in Titchmarsh. So that's the place they were named after. But as you can see, the castle has gone completely. You can see just the remains of the ditch in the front. And there are some stones peeking out through the holes in the grass. But unfortunately, that's otherwise there's nothing there to see. You know, there were several building periods there because there were some excavations.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was more or less the family seat.
Yes, for a certain period of time. It's sometimes not difficult to say which was their principal seat and which they used as well, but because this was also at some point described as ruinous, so they didn't really, it wasn't their primary seat. That was later on, probably most likely Minster Lovell. This is the Battle of Bannockburn, and after the family had become part of the peerage in the end of the 13th century, the family almost was extinct at the Battle of Bannockburn because John Lovell the fourth, as I call him, was killed at the battle, and at that time his heiress was his daughter, but his wife was pregnant, and so she gave birth to a son about 3-4 months after her husband died, and so the family continued despite this setback, which was a setback. These two fine gentlemen are John Lovell VII. He's the, I think, most interesting Lovell. He was a courtier. He was expelled from court once in 1388 at the Merciless Parliament. He recovered. He also survived the overthrow of Richard II. He almost became the tutor of the later Henry V, and he built Old Wardour Castle, which is one of the most spectacular ruins I've ever seen.
Is he the one with the hat, or?
He's the one with the hat. This is from a lectionary he commissioned. The other guy is probably he's the monk is handing him the book.
Oh.
And he's probably either the illustrator or the what's it called? The person he gave it to, because it was given to Salisbury Cathedral, the Lovell lectionary. This is Old Wardour Castle. It's a hexagonal castle, so it has an unusual shape. As you can see, it's a ruin. Unfortunately, it was destroyed during a siege in the Civil War. And but it's still really fine. It's in Wiltshire, somewhere between about halfway between Shaftesbury and Salisbury. This is Minster Lovell Hall, so that's the place that most people connect the Lovells to, because it's called Minster Lovell. It's from the 15th century, this version of the castle. There had been others before it, and it's actually situated in a very, very lovely place in the Windrush Valley. So it's definitely a scenic location for a castle. And because the family isn't that well documented, we don't know that often where they were, but we do know several people, several of them were definitely here. And at some point, Richard III visited Francis Lovell at Minster Lovell.
Have you ever met a Lovell in your life?
But there are none that are related to, the family, this family died out in the May line. So there are lots and lots of Lovells, but they're not related.
You're somewhere, maybe at an Oktoberfest, you meet some guy from England. Oh, my name is Lovell. I mean, do you feel really excited? Oh my Lord, it's a Lovell.
I've had several people write to me telling me that they were related, and I had to say, well, sorry, that's just not possible.
This looks like a coat of arms of sort.
Yes, we're now talking about the most famous Lovell, this is Francis Lovell's garter stall plate in St. George's Chapel in Windsor. It shows the garter. Obviously, it has the 5 coat of arms of the 5 baronies the family had by then inherited. Lists them at the bottom of on this garter stall plate. So it's Lovell, Holland, Bernal, Deancourt, and Gray.
We are looking at a dog or a wolf at the top there.
Yes, this is the dog or the wolf. It depends. I mean, it's a pun on the family name because Lovell is supposed to derive from Lupellus, the little wolf or the little dog. And of course, this is also kind of used in the famous doggerel, the cat, the rat, and Lovell our dog rule all England under the hog. So this is where the dog comes in.
How do you say little wolf in German?
Little?
Yeah, little wolf.
As klein. Or you would actually
That's it, not Wölfchen or something like that.
Wölfchen.
Wölfchen.
Yeah.
Okay. In Germany, have you ever met a Wölfchen? Sorry.
No, but there is another, there is one of the oldest German noble families that are still around, the Welfen.
Yeah, that's a very, very elaborate coat of arms there. All right. And who is this handsome fellow?
This handsome fellow is the son of Francis Lovell's niece, and not niece, cousin. So he's called Henry Parker. And he was a courtier and a translator and a survivalist. And this drawing is made by no less than Albrecht Dürer. So I was quite impressed when I found out, because he was on a mission in Nuremberg one day. And so he went to the, most famous painter drawer there and had his portrait drawn.
Who is the artist?
Albrecht Dürer.
Okay, let's go on to, oh my Lord, do I see Queen Anne Boleyn? Do I see one of the heads of the Hydra?
Yeah, you actually see 2 of them, because Catherine Howard is there as well.
Oh my Lord, okay.
Yeah, because Jane, Viscountess Rochford, so born Jane Parker, was the daughter of Henry Parker, and she was a lady-in-waiting of 5 of Henry VIII's 6 queens, and she was married to Anne Boleyn's brother, and she was executed alongside Catherine Howard because she was involved in the shenanigans that Catherine Howard was up to.
Shenanigans, were they? Let's go on. Now, who's this fine gentleman here as well?
This fine gentleman is my PhD supervisor, Mark Ormrod, and it was on his 60th birthday party in York at the King's Manor. And unfortunately, it was one of the last times I saw him because he passed away 2 years ago. So I was looking forward to sending him this finished book so he could see that at long last I had done something with my research. But yes.
Yes, Mark Ormrod was quite well respected and esteemed in the academic community. He's the author of the authoritative Edward III from the Yale Monarch series.
Yes.
Excellent book. He gives the full story. I don't quite agree with some of his admiration of Edward, but you can't go wrong with it otherwise.
Yeah, I mentioned briefly in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, in the I'm thanking my PhD students. I'm one of the PhD students he mentions. So I was quite pleased.
And whereabouts you were actually doing your research in York? You were studying in York?
Yes, I was studying in York. I lived there for 4 years. I mean, I did some research trips to Oxford and London, but I did live in York.
I hear they have a very, very fine Christmas market. Is that true?
I wouldn't know. I'm not a huge fan of Christmas markets. We have our own Christmas market in Munich, or several of them, and I usually don't go to any of them.
All right, just drinking at the Oktoberfest. All right, well, we have about 5 minutes left. So anybody got something they would like to ask Monica in these few minutes? I see everybody's muted. Is that
Monica, one question. What was the period most difficult to get research from? From the time in Normandy, or
yeah, I mean, I think the earlier the more difficult it is, because there's just fewer resources, fewer documents. I mean, the very, very early, I mean, the battle about Ivry, that is really well documented, but only in a chronicle, and because he was quite chatty, but also very well informed. So we know something about this, but then there are about 200 years where it's really difficult to find information, and it's also difficult to always be sure that the John Lovell they are talking about is the John Lovell of this family and not some other John Lovell, because there were several at the same time. I mean, there were two half-brothers called John Lovell, and they had a big fight, and that's when they were starting to call the main family the Lovells of John Lovells of Titchmarsh, and the other ones was John Lovells of Snootscombe. So they can keep them apart.
I see you're still holding your glass. What are you drinking there?
I'm drinking Rotkäppchen-Sekt.
Rotkäppchen, like Red Riding Hood?
Yes.
All right, good for you.
And it's one of the few big brands of East Germany that survived reunification. So.
Right. Okay.
I would like to know what fascinated you most about the family Lovell. What was the thing that you thought that surprised you most of all to find out?
I think the thing that surprised me most at first and continued to surprise me was that they managed to be at most of the important events in this period of time, from crusades to battles to sieges to depositions and so on. So they were participating or there.
Do you remember your first moment with the Lovells?
Well, I was probably reading the complete peerage. Sharon Penman's The Sun and Splendor gave me the idea to write about the Lovells, because, you know, Francis Lovell had a family, obviously, so why not research them?
Well, I do hope that when you undertake Adelaide, because you must now that you've said it on live TV, that you will keep us informed, and hopefully we will learn something new about her, something more about her than Otto. Why do we always have to hear about Otto? Yeah,
I would have to talk about all three Ottos. But of course the plan is to focus on her and her first marriage, and also about Otto's first wife, Edgith, who was from Wessex. She was a granddaughter of Thingamabob.
there you go. You have lots of time to hit your head tonight. I'm afraid, folks, we have to end it there because we've come to the end of our time, but thank you again for joining us. Monica, much success to you.
Thank you for hosting the book launch. Yeah.